The palace had been abandoned for over a century, its towering arches and crumbling domes standing like a frozen memory of a forgotten empire, and yet as Arav crossed the rusted iron gate that night, the silence felt unnaturally alert, as if the building itself was awake and watching him breathe. Every step echoing too loudly in the hollow courtyard where weeds grew through cracked marble and the moonlight spilled like pale blood across broken fountains, and he reminded himself that he was here only to document the place, to capture stories for his channel, to prove that the legends were just legends, but the moment his boot touched the first palace stair, a sound followed, soft, deliberate footsteps behind him. He froze, heart thudding, counting his breaths, telling himself it was an echo, just an echo, yet when he stepped forward again, the footsteps followed once more, perfectly timed, not ahead, not beside, but always behind, and the air turned cold, unnaturally cold, carrying a faint scent of old incense and dust, and as Arav whispered his camera narration, his voice trembled despite his effort to sound calm, because the palace corridors stretched endlessly, lined with faded murals of royal processions where the painted eyes seemed to track his movement, and the footsteps continued, closer now, heavier, like someone wearing wet stone instead of shoes, and when he spun around with his flashlight, the beam revealed nothing but peeling walls and darkness pooling in corners that refused to reflect light. And panic crept in slowly, like a patient predator, as he realized the sound didn't echo the way footsteps should, it had weight, intention, rhythm, and then came the whisper. Not words, but breath, warm against his ear, as if someone invisible leaned in to remind him that he was not alone, and memories of the palace legend surfaced, stories of a royal family that vanished overnight, servants found wandering mute, claiming they heard footsteps long after the palace was sealed, and Arav laughed nervously for the camera, urging viewers to stay with him, to subscribe if they wanted the truth uncovered, because even he could feel the story tightening around him, pulling him deeper, and as he entered the grand throne hall, its ceiling collapsed and opened to the sky, the footsteps stopped suddenly, replaced by a crushing silence that felt worse, because silence meant expectation, and then, from the far end of the hall, a single footprint appeared in the dust, fresh, clear, and slowly forming, as if pressed by an unseen foot walking toward him, one step at a time. Arav backed away as the invisible footprints advanced, each step pressing into the dust with a sound like bone grinding against stone, and his mind screamed to run but his body refused, trapped between terror and disbelief, because how do you flee from something that doesn't exist, and yet exists enough to leave marks, and the palace seemed to breathe around him, walls creaking, air pulsing, the throne looming like a judge. And then the whispers became clearer, layered voices overlapping in sorrow and command, telling him that the palace was never empty, that it remembered every footstep ever taken within its walls, every betrayal, every scream swallowed by its stones, and Arav realized with horror that the footsteps weren't following him. They were retracing old paths, royal walks, servant routes, escape attempts that failed, and suddenly the floor was alive with movement, hundreds of invisible feet marching, running, collapsing, the sound overwhelming, and images flooded his mind without permission. A prince fleeing down these halls, a queen dragged by her hair, guards turning on their own, blood-soaking marble, curses spoken in desperation, and Arav fell to his knees, clutching his camera as the palace showed him its truth, because it wanted a witness, someone to remember, someone to tell the story so the footsteps would not fade into nothingness, and in that moment the present stood before him, not seen, but felt. An unbearable weight, like history pressing down, and a final whisper slid into his mind, promising that once you hear the footsteps, you carry them forever, and the palace released him abruptly, silence crashing down so hard it rang in his ears, and when Arav stumbled out into the night, gasping, the palace gates slammed shut behind him on their own, dust rising as if something had just passed through them, and days later, as he edited the footage, he noticed sounds he hadn't heard before. Extra footsteps layered beneath his own, whispers syncing perfectly with his narration, and though he wanted to delete it all, he uploaded the video instead, urging viewers to watch till the end, to subscribe, to listen carefully, because the palace had chosen its storyteller, and as you listen now, late at night, in the quiet of your room, ask yourself, are those footsteps from the story, or are they walking behind you too?